let's talk about monitoring and measurement of results. This corresponds not only for the energy auditors, but also for the companies for their internal monitoring. So when we don't have a service contract for monitoring purposes, we still try to provide them a monitoring framework as part of our energy audit report. And I will provide you with some of the references that they need all as well, and then some possible ways of performance monitoring, how to establish an auditing mechanism, a management review, and the reporting and how to report performance at the end. So if you look at the ISO 50001, it requires to monitor in section 9, and section 9.1 says that monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation of energy performance and the energy management system, in which it requires to develop a monitoring and measurement plan, evaluate energy performance and effectiveness of energy management system. Improvement in energy performance shall be evaluated by comparing energy performance indicators against the energy performance baselines. Then investigate and respond to significant deviations in energy performance. So if you have normalized ENPIs, then both these points get covered automatically. Then evaluation of compliance with legal requirements and other requirements. So if there were any legal issues that we had, for example, any notices from the Environment Protection Agency, have we already completed those or not? Then in 9.2, it requires to conduct an internal audit of energy management system. And then in 9.3, it requires to do a management review. In HIG FEM, in level 2, it requires companies to demonstrate continual improvements compared to the baselines. So what they have to do is, every year, they have to show that at least in one of the baselines, they have shown an improvement compared to the previous year. And these should actually account for at least 80% of their energy inputs. So if an ENPI, if they show improvement in only one ENPI, which is related to the 80% of energy input, they qualify for the numbers marks. If this is a very small kind of input energy that they take in, then they don't get any marks. And in level 3, it requires them to develop science-based targets. Now there is an institute called Science-Based Targets Initiative, SBTI. I shared this as well in the beginning when we were talking about HIG FEM. And in this one, actually, you have to first commit that we want to improve. Then you have to give them your targets. How much do we want to improve, reduce our GHG emissions, all in scope 1, scope 2, and scope 3. And then they would monitor if you have improved or not. And why they call it science-based? Because according to science, we must retain our Earth's global average temperature maximum up to 1.5 degrees more than the pre-industrial level. And according to the recent IPCC report, we are going to cross this 1.5 degrees Celsius global warming by 2030 already. So the companies have to ensure that whatever targets they set actually scientifically prove that they will contribute to achieving this science-based target. So this is also one of the requirements for forward-looking companies if they really want to move forward into reducing their GHG emissions. And for this, they have to do a lot of monitoring as well. Some example tools. So remember the energy management system maturity matrix, clean by design test 10 best practices tools, eco maps that we used, and then the HIG facility environment module points that we had. You can use all these for the performance monitoring as well. You can use checklists, different checklists. For example, if you use a boiler efficiency improvement checklist earlier, where you used, okay, boiler is operating well or not, it has any leakages or not. So there could be many points that you might have evaluated earlier, which are not directly linked to the energy savings, but these are linked to the operations of the boiler maybe in an efficient way. You could use those checklists as well in the monitoring reports if they have done any improvement in those aspects or not. So for example, we could use the maturity matrix. We already have a baseline value with us, and we could plot a baseline and the current values on the same pie chart, on the same spider web diagram. and we can see in which areas factory has shown improvement, or in which areas the performance remains the same, and in which areas the performance has gone down. So this would give us a bit of qualitative review of the energy management system. Then we could use our eco maps. So remember, you developed these eco maps, we identified different kind of NPOs in different areas. So you could post an old eco map, and you could conduct a new eco mapping. Don't do it yourself. When you go for monitoring, involve company's team and ask them to do the eco map. So one is a before improvement eco map, and one is the after improvement eco map. And then you can see which areas we had some NPOs, and in which areas now we don't have these NPOs. So this can also show a visual impact in our reports as well, that visually we have also provided improvements. And then we could also monitor our key performance indicators. For example, these are values for a factory for every month. These are the absolute GHG emissions, and in the bottom the graph shows how this factory is performing in this term. And then the fresh water liter per kg, process water cubic meters per kg, and then steam steam per kg of product, or kilowatt hour electricity total per kg of product, and GHG emissions from utilities in kilogram CO2 per kilogram of product. And it shows either we are improving or are we really going down in performance. And it is very much possible that your GHG emissions are increasing, but your normalized ENP is reducing, because maybe in this area actually the factory's production really boosted up. Here the factory had low production levels, but in these 3 months the factory had high production levels. So the total energy intake increased. That is why the GHG emissions absolute values increased, but the normalized values decreased. So this is a way of also showing. We also saw an example recently that the factory showed improvement in all these areas, but showed that their absolute GHG emissions have increased, but the production volume did not increase drastically. So then we investigate that actually they had changed their fuel mix. So earlier they were using natural gas for burning, and now they shifted to coal. So because of that, their emissions increased. So that is how and obviously then in that case, their emission indicator of kg per kg also increased. And then, for example, we could use our action plan. So what were the actions identified? And then in each visit, what was their take in that visit? For example, they had to conduct trials of using graded coal in steam boilers and oil heaters. Earlier, they were using coal which had mixed grades. So they had 0 mm up till ranging up to 50 mm. And we requested them to do a grading of coal, at least divide them into 2 or 3 different segments, and then try to use these into boilers using different settings. And in the next visit, we saw that the trials were in progress and they would compare the data. Here they said that they have installed the oxygen sensor, and the manual control shall be applied. In the next visit, we went in and they said we're going to automate it, and the demand has been raised. So we got a copy of the purchase order from them, which is uploaded here. Similarly, for all the others, for example, waste heat recovery from standards. In first visit, they did not want to do it, but in second visit, they said that we are currently automating the center first, and then we will go for the heat recovery. So this is monitoring of the progress as well that we can show. And then end results, as you said, how much savings have we actually achieved in each of these, what are the percentage of savings, and in which areas we have actually gone down in performance. So getting the final impact report there. And then the audit. So this audit has to be conducted by the company internally. This is not an energy audit, but the audit of the energy management system, ISO 50001 implementation resources. In the step 6 folder, you will find templates, protocols, SOPs for this internal audit. And the factory must conduct an internal audit to see if all the energy management system practices are going up to the mark, if there are any non-conformances in terms of procedures, and what kind of action plans can be taken. And in step 6, we have the audit protocol for internal audits. The audit protocol for HIG FEM can be downloaded from this link. For energy perspectives, these are the 3 areas which are very, very important when we are going there. Don't only look at the energy use, also look at the environmental aspects as well as emissions to air, because all these energy utilities are also responsible for the emissions to air, either ambient air or the final exhaust air. So these are the areas that we have to look for. Then the management review. So company has to set a frequency. Would they do a management review every year or once 6 months or once in a quarter, for example? And then the energy management system audits that they did previously must be linked with the corrective actions and the management review. So management review would see, is the management system actually working? Is it stable, adequate? Is it giving us any savings or not? And for that, these are the elements that you can review in the management review. For example, follow-up actions from the previous management reviews. So what was decided in the previous management review? Have we implemented that or not? What is the energy performance of the company? So bring in charts. Has the energy performance increased or decreased? Which objectives and targets have been met? If there were any internal or external audits, what were the results of those audits? How much non-conformances came out and how many were resolved? Any compliance with the legal? Did we have any legal issues? Did we have any communication with external partners? Did any customers raise any complaints about our energy performance, for example? Are there any circumstances that are changing? For example, are there any new client targets? Are there any new emission standards coming out? Are there any legal circumstances that have changed? What are the changes required to the management system, to the energy policy, to the risk assessment? Do we need to change our objectives and targets, for example? So all these, you can also get templates in the same folder again, ISO 50001 implementation resources. Go to step 7. It is all about conducting management review. I have just summarized some of the points here. And then final reporting of the impact. I mean, you can have many things. For example, what was the commitment of the CEO? What was the nature of the business? How the company determined what are the problems to be addressed, for example, which stakeholders were involved, which goals and objectives were set, information on how the company has performed against the goal. So what were the savings achieved, for example? Are there any future plans? What were the measures that have been completed and which measures they want to take forward in future, which still need to be implemented? Are there any revisions to the objectives or targets, any standards or guidelines that are being used? And are there any independent assurance statements, or for example, any third party review of the energy performance? So these kind of things could come in for the final performance monitoring report as well.